when you talk to the pharmaceutical company, this is a position paper by the RX&D, which is the association that represents the drug companies in Canada. And they say that, their role really is to be in the education business, We're about educating and communicating information to physicians. And the reason we should be in this business is because we're the most knowledgeable people about drugs. It's kind of like saying Molson's Canadian is a very knowledgeable company about beer, and therefore they should be educating people about alcoholism. And that's maybe an extreme example. So again, direct-to-consumer advertising, it's a relatively new phenomena. When I say new, in the last 10 years, we've seen the growth from virtually nothing in terms of spending on direct-to-consumer advertising to about $6 billion a year in the US. And I would say that kind of advertising probably has much more effect on women. And the reason why I say that is that a lot of the marketers know that even to get the guy to take a drug, you've got to target the ad to his wife. So the women in society essentially become the targets of a lot of the pharmaceutical marketing. In fact, I saw some ads in magazines, women's magazines, and the ads were about men, really kind of beefy men, and the sort of caption was, go get him to check his cholesterol. It was a drug ad for men, but it was targeted to women. Another area that you see a lot of drug use in children is birth control. Okay, I mean older children. And this is have you seen this ad? This was an ad a few years ago in bus shelters in Vancouver. I saw it, I think, in the Toronto subway. It's a drug for severe acne, and as described there, androgenization. So you've taken other drugs, hasn't cleared up your acne. This is what we would call a second line or third line treatment. Though it's also a birth control pill, right? It has estradiol in it, which is a birth control treatment. And so we saw drug ads in Canada, you're sort of saying, what are the ads all about? Why are they doing this? These aren't really, according to Health Canada, technically not drug ads. They are the company issuing reminder ads. By the way, this particular treatment can't even be sold in Europe as a birth control drug, but it's being sold in Canada, and it's being advertised in Canada as a birth control pill. Again, there's another birth control. Have you seen the LS? There was a whole range of these kinds of ads. Very, very clever marketing. And I remember showing this to a group of students, and one of the guys says, "What's it for?" And I said, "You don't get out that much, do you?" So even though it's not telling you it's a birth control ad, I mean, if you know what the little case at the bottom is, anyways. Companies are not allowed to advertise the name of a drug and what the drug does. So in this case, they're advertising the name of the drug, but they're not telling you what the drug does. So according to Health Canada, that's legal. So in our sense, this is a way to get around the pesky laws that prevent you from advertising drugs to consumers. So is there any risks involved in direct-to-consumer advertising? I don't know, I think there's a lot of risks. One is it is, advancing this pill for every ill kind of thinking. You're giving one side of the story, even though the drug ads, in the US anyways, the ones that are required to have the long list of side effects after they talk about the woman's running through the field of flowers, and then, this drug could make you, die, and other things. In the sort of lower tones. I think advertising is clearly having an effect on public health in terms of how much money we're clearly spending on drugs. And so that, just under that issue, I think it's a concern. As I said, we spend more money on prescription drugs and the side effects caused by those drugs, by the way, because that's also a cost, which means that we have less money for other things, including important things like education. That's just pandering to the crowd, part of the speech. Okay. I wrote an article in the Vancouver Sun a few years ago, and I like the cartoon they put in there. I would never say that the drug company is a sort of money-obsessed rat. This is one way that physicians get their information about drugs. These are the sales reps, and the drug industry found out very early that the best way to sell drugs is to get in a physician's office and make the pitch face to face. The advantage of doing that is that you can almost not regulate it. Who knows what happens? Who knows what the pharmaceutical rep is saying? And it can be very effective. And in Canada, the drug companies spend about $3 billion a year on that kind of marketing. It's a huge business. And it's very profitable for the people that do it, and it's effective. So this is what would happen if the drug industry, if they listened to the farm lobby instead of the drug lobby. Sort of talk a little bit about ADHD, which I think I'm going to hopefully learn something from your experience with seeing this in sort of in the schools. We wrote a chapter in this book on ADHD. And the chapter focused on, there's just some background on really the sheer growth in the number of prescriptions written for methylphenidate, which is Ritalin, and other types of newer ADHD type drugs. The story that we focused on in here was around this group called CHAD, which stands for Children and Adults Attention Deficit Disorder. And this was a small kind of non-profit group started by very interested parents in sort of the mid-'80s, and they really wanted to sort of make a case for better treatment and better care for kids who were diagnosed with being hyperactive. But then something happened along the way. The drug companies discovered that this group existed and began to court them and say, you know, we have mutual goals, we would like to help you out. And so this group started taking money from the drug companies. You might say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, over time, their message went from, we should do what we can to help these children, there's a whole range of treatments, and we need to be lobbying governments for better support in schools, for example, for better teachers' aides and so on. The message, though, once they started swimming in drug company, became, we need to lobby the government to pay for these drugs. The drugs are extremely effective. The drugs are the only way to treat this condition. So it was really a very fascinating story of how an independent group basically became, I would say, captured by the drug from the companies that manufactured these drugs. And really the message that came out at the end of the day was, in my opinion, a very biased, kind of one-sided, very pro-drug sort of, if your child has attention deficit disorder, then it's a chemical problem, and we have a chemical solution. So that sort of, that string of pearls, so to speak, was really lined up by the funding of the drug companies. Just a quick note about other prescription drugs. I mean, I don't have any personal experience with, I mean, there's really nothing in my own medicine cabinet, but in terms of kids taking prescription drugs and using them sort of illicitly, apparently this is a problem. I haven't really heard much about this, but according to this bit of research, and this is from the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, so they're looking at substance abuse. So typically they look at illicit drugs, so you know, marijuana and so on. But you know, there is a range of experience with kids taking, you know, going into their parents' medicine cabinet and taking what they want. I found this kind of interesting, saying the explosion in the prescription of addictive opioids. Opioids would be painkillers. Depressants and stimulants has, for many children, made the medicine cabinet a greater temptation and threat than the illegal street drug dealer, as some parents have become unwitting and passive pushers. Yeah, that's kind of fairly strong. I don't know if I would say that, but to say that parents are pushing drugs onto their kids, I think probably in this case you have maybe as the drug industry says, we have a mutual confluence of interests here.